Welcome, friends. This morning we're going to be talking about fear. Fear is a vast, expansive subject.
Sure is.
So we're going to begin by looking at a quote from Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey says, "The thing you fear most has no power. Your fear of it is what has the power. Facing the truth really will set you free." And that's a biblical stance also. The truth will set you free. So most of us carry around quite a bit of fear from the past that is really unnecessary for us to carry around, except that we have become so comfortable in our discomfort that we continue to carry it with us. And so we look at the idea of fear from the acronym that David and I both really love, which is false evidence appearing real. Now, I remember the first time someone said to me, when I was walking through the dark night of the soul, said, "Well, you just have to let it go because it's not real anyway." And I was like, "Oh, what are you talking about? This is real. This was my life. This is what really happened." And yet at the same time, I was not spiritually mature enough to realize the difference between real and real. Capital R, real, reality, and lowercase real, what we make real. What is real, what really we experienced in life. And from our experiences, we take on belief systems, and those belief systems can carry around a lot of fear within us. We carry around that fear until we don't, until we allow the truth to set us free. It doesn't mean that whatever happened didn't happen. We're not saying that. It's not la la land. What we're saying is that the false evidence is the idea that that's the real you. That is a part of your experiences as a human being, whatever it is that brought you to a state of fear. However, that is not the reality of you. The reality of you is that you are a child of God. You are whole, complete, and perfect.
There's never really any energy and any condition in your life or any circumstance in your life except what you attribute to it. The only energy that it is, whether it's positive or negative, the only power that is there is according to what you think about it and what you hold. As Deborah is saying, you hold on to those things. What do you hold to be your truth, your reality? And those are the things that create the fear. Those are the things that create the joy in your life. Those are the things that create love in your life. What do you think about it and how do you relate to it? And then hold on to it in your memory banks so that you can come back to it again. Fear is something, the false evidence appearing real, is an energy that we give to circumstances and conditions in our lives, and then from that point on, buy into that. We live up to those circumstances every time we think of the fear that we have attributed to it. Ernest Holmes talks a lot about how fear is nothing more than faith misdirected. You can say another acronym, fear is faith empowered and reversed. It's using faith in a negative way. So we're actually giving power to something by creating a belief system in it of our own, giving it faith, and then allowing it to fester in our lives rather than allowing it to benefit and blossom in our lives. And so Jesus talked about this quite a bit, the idea of faith. And I love the teaching story, the stories of Jesus and his healings, and he would quite often say at the end of a healing, your faith has made you whole. Jesus didn't actually claim responsibility for the healing. He said, your faith has made you whole. That faith of positivity allowed them to heal themselves from a negative condition. And what he is saying also is that the only thing that held you in that negative condition in the first place was faith. used in a negative direction. So it became fear. We quite often want to turn it around and have faith rather than fear. As Deborah was talking about also, the idea that it's easily said but not easily done to shift our thoughts into a positive state of mind.
But I will say it becomes easier as we practice.
Yes,
the
it
more
does.
we practice, we change the habit of the way we think, and we catch it sooner. And it's important that when you catch it, when you catch yourself going down into the dumps, when you catch yourself moving into negative thinking, it's important that you give yourself a pat on the back. Thank heavens I realized this. I recognized what I was doing with my own stinking thinking, and now I can change it.
So when fear raises its ugly head and you come across it again, you don't validate it and give it energy by buying into all the negative ideas around it. You come up with another acronym and say, fears evaporate and release.
Ooh.
You just let them go. Ernest Holmes talks about this technique of coming up with a positive idea. He says, faith reverses the process. We ought to be glad there is something we can do about it, and this something we ought to do. We ought to find out what we are afraid of and why, and then reverse the whole process. And the simplest method is to learn to have faith in this thing called life, to have faith in God and in the power greater than we are. It's that simple. Really?
Right. Yes. So, how do we go about this? What are some of the steps? Well, the truth is that the answers lie within you. But for me, I found a couple things that have been helpful over the years. And one of them was learning to make friends with my fears. And by friends, I don't mean friends that I'm going to keep hanging around with, but friends that I can recognize within me, ideas that come through me and that I know are a part of the greater mind that is, and I can choose to have them or I can release them. Just like some relationships we have, they no longer serve the betterment of you or the other person, and so you release them, you let them go. And fears are very much like that. And so we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to be willing to sit with our fear until we are so bored, maybe is what happens, that we decide, well, nothing horrible has happened, so I guess it's all okay. Doesn't make what occurred necessarily, depending on what the fear is about, okay. And so getting comfortable being uncomfortable is important. And I can remember when I was working with someone, she was working with me, and she said, what are you so afraid of? Why don't you let go? And I got real clear in that moment of that question. What is it that you're so afraid of? And I realized that I was so afraid that I would cry until I died. I was so sad. I had such a sadness inside of me from an experience that I had had in life that I was afraid that if I really let go, that I would just cry until I literally died, just melt into nothingness. And when I realized that, facing the truth will set you free. I'm not going to cry until I die. I'm going to cry until I'm so exhausted I take a nap. And then I will have spent the tears, and there will be no more tears. I will have washed away. And that's important, cleansing away any negative experiences that we've had until we truly feel free. And for me, a part of that, because although many people would tell you I don't live in my head at all, I only live in my heart, I personally believe I live in my head a lot. And I believe that understanding and reasoning is important. if some of the things that happened to us that created fears for us occurred as a child or when we were spiritually immature, we were unable to separate those in our reasoning capacity as a mature adult. And now, as an adult, you can do it. You can do it for yourself. Within you is the power of the mother and the father and the child. And so you are all of that and so much more.
So awareness and recognition of our fears is actually quite a blessing. It gives us an opportunity to see what are the underlying unconscious thoughts that are going on in our minds that are actually creating our reality around us. And it allows us to look at things logically and understand what is that fear that I'm having, where did it come from, and why am I holding on to it and allowing it to have a negative effect on my life.
Yes, so let's all take a deep, relaxed breath together. Ready? Breathe in. Hold it. And release. And release, and release, and release. And let us conclude today with these words from Ernest Holmes. As we look at the idea of overcoming any and all fears that create obstacles for us for a life of good. Ernest Holmes wrote, "To overcome fear is the greatest adventure of the mind of man." And let me restate that, changing one word. To overcome fear is the greatest adventure of the mind of humankind.